Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We are hosting a 15-minute power learning session called The Power of the First Impression, Exhibiting at Trade Shows 101. Now, I am going to introduce myself two different ways, and after each introduction, I would like for you to take just a couple seconds to process your first impression. So the first introduction, I'm Rhiannon. I own an exhibit house in Las Vegas. We design and construct trade show exhibits for brands who use trade show marketing as a form to bring their products to market. Hey everyone, I'm Rhiannon and I am the CMO of Steelhead Productions. We are a creative agency located in Las Vegas. We help brands and trade show and event planners bring their marketing to life three-dimensionally on the trade show floor. Now, between those two introductions, I'm sure have had different reactions and responses and be thinking different things about your first impression. I only did this exercise to just draw a little bit attention to the fact that some slight differences can make a huge difference in the way things are perceived. So today, I would like to provide everybody with some tools to help with slight adjustments and planning thoughtfulness that can help trade show exhibitors and marketers completely change the trajectory and success of their trade show program. Now, as a supplier to exhibitors, I have seen such vastly different levels of success, and those levels of success are typically driven by some pre-planning. So today I will be sharing 3 tools that can change the trajectory of your trade show program. So the first tool that I'm going to be sharing, which is downloadable, and also we have some hard copies available, is called the Creative Brief Outline. Now, there are about 13 points. I'm going to run through them very quickly just to highlight ways of thinking in each one of the sections that can help drive great alignment between your team and then outside vendors. So this isn't a document that's intended just for internal share. I highly recommend any vendor, any supplier who you have engaged to help you pull off your program, that you share the vision with them. I believe in the power of numbers and alignment. So share with anybody who's involved. So there are, like I mentioned, 13 questions here. The first question asks simply why you're going to the trade show in the first place. Now, I have planned trade shows for our company in the past, and I don't ask that question in a silo. I go out into our company and ask executives, the VP of sales, the salespeople, the marketing team for their opinion as to why they think we're going to the trade show. Now, we all know that the trade show floor can be a very noisy environment. Now, a noise in the level of noise actually on the trade show floor with all of those people congregated in one space, but also just the sensory noise. So every level of our senses are being called to by all of the different exhibitors. So question number 2 asks, if the attendee were to only remember one thing about your trade show program or your trade show exhibiting experience, your company, what is the one thing that you would want them to remember about your company? Now, we only have about 8 seconds worth of attention when in any environment. So if you only capture people's attention for 8 seconds, what do you want them to remember? The third question asks about the target audience. Now, so many people will very generally respond to a question like this. Women, 30 years old, maybe a college degree. I recommend trying to dig as deep as possible into the demographics and really nailing down 1 or 2 profiles of people who you're speaking to, and then getting very specific about their makeup, who they are, how they communicate, the type of languaging that person would use, because all of that information can help drive how you show up for the attendee on the trade show floor. They will feel very seen and comfortable in the environment you create if you're very intentional about speaking directly to them. Question number 4 is a 3-part question. Now, for those of you who may be fairly new to exhibiting, there are 3 parts to planning for a trade show. The first part is pre-show. So what are the things that you can do to build excitement for your attendee? Sometimes that can be in reference to a mail campaign, an email campaign. There are things that you can do in social media to help build excitement. Then the plan for the show. That's what this guide is designed to really help with. But I think some pre-planning can add a level of depth and opportunity for your company to gain some familiarity with the attendee prior to the trade show. The third part of the trade show marketing section is the post-show. Now, this is a piece that many exhibitors don't pay a lot of attention to. They finish with the trade show and then they're so excited to be done, and the marketing team and the event planners, they are no longer involved. I think that that's a missed opportunity. So I highly recommend to think about helping the sales team with a very strategic follow-up plan to keep your brand in front of people after the show. It will help with the follow-up, whatever that may be, from your sales team. So the 5th question asks about a campaign theme. Now, the way that I've suggested to our clients when thinking about the campaign theme is to go back to what you want people to remember about your company. That one thing, if people were to only remember. Now, how can you create a campaign around that? I'll give you a really quick example that I've seen executed beautifully. We had one company that wanted the attendees to remember that they were a global provider. Now, a very unique way that they brought that to life was by offering chocolates from all over the world. So they developed this around the world theme, having flags and chocolates from the different places where they had their services set up. So I just recommend going back to the one thing and trying to build some messaging and campaign theming around that. The 6th question, what do you want the attendee interaction to look like? And that's driven by 3 questions. What do you want them to see? So to think about when they're in your space, what you want them to visually take in. What do you want them to do once they are inside your trade show environment? And then how do you want them to feel? And then number 7 asks about the messaging. Now, we have seen as suppliers, exhibitors really overdo it on the messaging. The graphics get complicated, and quite honestly, when attendees are being exposed to so much information, the likelihood that they're going to read something detailed in that environment is very slight. Additionally, with demo stations, I think this trade show environment is designed to bring people together in a moment in time to experience a brand as opposed to get tactical. So the idea from our perspective is to really get people to remember your company, remember what it is that you have to offer, very high level, expose them to who you are and what you do, and then give them opportunities to go deep after the trade show. The 8th question talks about a senses plan. Now, just the plain old 5 senses. So we're looking at things like, what do you want people to possibly taste? Going back to that chocolate idea. What do you want them to smell? Maybe cups of coffee. My suggestion here is to consider all 5 senses and try to create a plan to integrate a sensory engagement component. Now, my experience has been, and that of the clients that we've helped, the more senses that are engaged, the more memorable the experience. Number 9 asks about booth design. Now, a lot of exhibitors think about booth design from their perspective. What do they want to have integrated? As opposed to maybe thinking about it from a two-pronged perspective. One being the experience of the attendee. If you have areas where people will congregate, are those areas designed kind of ergonomically to host whatever the activity is that you may have in that space? So to be very thoughtful about the ergonomics. Additionally, a lot of exhibitors or the marketers who are helping drive the design fail to realize that they will have staff in the booth for hours on end. And there are small niceties that you can request be included just to be considerate of your staff and the amount of time that they will be spending in the booth space itself. For instance, maybe putting a mirror on the back of the closet door so somebody can check their smile prior to kind of going out and servicing the attendee. Also, making sure that there are charging stations so that people can keep their electronics charged up. Little things like that are important to consider. So when planning for your booth, take into consideration those few things. And then the staffing plan. Now, this goes back to one of the resources that I mentioned that we were going to be covering. I have here a list. It's called a booth staffing checklist. It lists about 8-9 different points to consider when trying to get your staff in alignment with what you're trying to achieve on the trade show floor. It has been a best practice of our clients to have a pre-meeting with all of the booth staff to go over the creative brief so that they know what you're trying to do on the trade show floor, and then ensuring that they feel well equipped. Tips on how to have the right conversation, clarity on what they're going to be wearing and how you'd like them to show up, making sure that there's a clear schedule put together. And all of those points are highlighted in this document that you'll have available to you. One opportunity with staff that I've pointed out in the creative brief that I think frequently gets overlooked is staff attire. Now, I believe that this is an opportunity to extend your brand presence on the trade show floor. Now imagine if you were very intentional about having a certain look or a certain feel in reference to the attire of your staff. Well, that look and feel, if you times it by, say, 10 staff working the booth, when everybody's out in community spaces, whether that be at a networking event, the attendees are going to start to see some commonality, and they're going to possibly have better brand recognition on the trade show floor when they see all of those points congregated in one space at your booth. Question number 12. Speaks specifically to some marketing and sales goals. Now, one challenge that we've seen with our clients is that those two goals get blurred. Now, for instance, we will ask, why are you going to the trade show? And then what are your goals? And the marketer, the event planner, the trade show planner will give us a sales goal as a response. So for instance, they'll say, we are trying to generate X number of meetings, this number of sales, and those are very, very good goals. I think that those need to be kind of grouped into the sales goals category, as opposed to having a marketing goal or a trade show coordinator or director goal be something like number of demos given, number of people who participated in an activity, number of people who scanned their badge. Now that is a better indicator of the amount of attraction brought in by the marketing, by the event planning team. Then a good marker for success of the sales team and how they took that attraction and cultivated that into leads, opportunities, or meetings. Those are two very separate goals. So anyway, there's a space here to do a little brainstorming around that. Okay, so the last section on the creative brief, question 13, speaks to vendor selection. Now, I believe that there's a lot of power in picking the right group of people to support the execution of your plan. So to even possibly think about your vendors, not just as in a silo suppliers, but they can be partners that can work with your team and be an extension of your team to help bring your vision to life. So my recommendation is to brainstorm who you think will help be in alignment with what you're trying to achieve and then has the ability to bring your vision to life. The last resource that I would like to share are my favorite book recommendations. As marketers, these books can add a lot of value, but I think for those who are working with events and trade shows, they can also add a lot of depth to the way of thinking when you're putting together your creative brief. So the first book that I recommend, wrong sheet. The first book that I recommend is called Build a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Now, this book is full of tons of great information, but I love how he speaks about the hero and the guide. I think some companies are very comfortable talking about how wonderful they are and all of the great services and products they provide, making them the hero. Donald recommends that we make the prospect and our customers the hero, and we are the guide, and we have the tools and the resources to help them become the highest and best version of themselves. Gary Keller, he wrote the book, The One Thing. This goes back to the creative brief and the second question, what's the one thing that you want people to remember about your company? And he talks about the psychology associated with having a North Star. Simon Sinek starts with why, again, speaks to the creative brief and the first question. Having clarity and alignment around why you're doing something adds power and momentum behind the vision. The book Fascinate by Sally Hogshead, she speaks to 7 emotional triggers. I love this way of thinking because as you're building a campaign theme, you can think about the emotions you would like to evoke from the attendee, and her thoughts are the more emotion that is evoked, the more memorable the experience. Giftology, this is by John Ruhlin. He talks about swag and branding promotional items. I love his perspective because he really flips what is a traditional understanding around having logos on everything. He makes us stop, pause, and kind of question our intentionality behind that. Top of Mind by John Hall, that's the 6th book recommendation. He speaks to communication rhythmically over a long period of time helps solidify a brand in the mind of a prospect or client. He gives lots of great ideas on ways to do that. And then, of course, one of my favorite marketers of our time right now, Gary Vaynerchuk. He wrote a book, Crush It. If you haven't read it or if you don't know who he is, I highly recommend checking him out. His thoughts are really speaking to the digital, social impact that the internet is having on the way people are perceiving and leaning into any brand, regardless of the industry. I love the way he talks about bringing brands to life in the digital space and it not even being a nicety, but it's absolutely a necessity in today's day and age. So that's it for the 3 resources that we have made available during this quick 15-minute tutorial on how to create a great first impression on the trade show floor. I'm here as a resource. Please feel free to reach out. I have a team here at Steelhead with different areas of expertise, all speaking to showing up well on the trade show floor. We are all here if you have any questions. I hope these tools were helpful, and I'll be around for a few questions. Thank you.